Hey guys, it's Wolfie here. Just wanted to do something a little bit different today. So normally I talk to people and I'm trying to explain some of the higher, more complex mysteries, right? Like I'm trying to get really into the depths of things. But the truth is, the more I think about it, the more I feel like what I really need to do is make something for Christians, make something for people who are really involved in modern belief systems, because I think as time goes on here, they're starting to not really understand how to cope with what's going on around them, right? Look at what's going on Twitter right now. It's completely amazing. We got all kinds of people from all walks of life, all different faiths and dogmas and creeds, which are all coming forth and saying and sharing these experiences which we're having over the last year. And these experiences are like different for every person, right? Like, but we've got a wide variety of intensified spiritual activity. And some of you guys who have followed me have heard some of my accounts. But really, you look anywhere in so-called spiritual Twitter, and you're going to see that it's everywhere. All right. So now, listen to me for a second here. I spent my entire life in the Protestant religion. All right. I grew up as a Protestant. I was catechized. I was in that world, and my family was very much in that world as well. And that's what I knew. And I always felt like there was something more, but I couldn't get my hands around it. And I kind of just went back and forth throughout my life between being more of a part of that and not, secretly wondering in my mind if there wasn't something else or something more to it than what we're being told there. And clearly, I think many of us have asked that same thing at some point. And so I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, that yes, I think there is something which has been kept from us. And as a person who's been in that side, of life, back and forth, and still am really involved in it even now, just in a very different way, I feel like it's my job to, and almost my responsibility in a way, to kind of reach out to you guys and be as a bridge and a guide into this future, because I don't think you're going to get the answers from your traditional sources, because I don't think they even know what the hell to do. I don't think they know how to wrap their heads around a lot of this new earth stuff. And I want you to know that a lot of your tradition and a lot of your ideas and a lot of your core beliefs don't have to change, in this new earth paradigm. And I think that's what a lot of people are worried about, that because we bring forth these new ideas, scientific or religious or spiritual or whatever, and because all these old things are coming forth that we're uncomfortable with, that somehow the world is going to change to a point where there's no place for us or you anymore. And I don't think that's true at all. That's what I want to stress more than anything else. There is a place for you, but you've got to get answers that let you wrap your head around it in your own way, that satisfies your own belief system, so you can carry on believing. Otherwise, you're going to lose heart, you're going to lose your place in this crazy world which is going on. And if I think, if what happens is what I think is going to happen, this process is going to accelerate for more and more people. More and more people are going to learn and get connected to this infinite consciousness which we have. And as they do, they're going to be exposed to certain things of a spiritual, elemental, scientific nature, which you're not going to have explanations for. And I think that's why so many of us have had to experience it first in the last year, right? So many of us who were more prepared, I think, have had to experience it so that we knew and know how to help people who are going to be experiencing it now en masse. Because really, it's been a small group of us, right? There's been like, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand of us who have really experienced this intensely. And now I think our purpose is to lead people forward into the new day as they start to experience this too. And we all know that most people who are religious are not prepared to deal with a lot of the intense things of the spiritual nature, at least not in Western religion, right? Because why? Christianity has been made primarily to sort of change and reconfigure the way these things work and make them into a different system that doesn't look anything like the old one does, but still conveys much of the same concepts. It's just that they're in a different shell. really, this is true, I think, of all religions that we have as modern religions today. They're all basically based on something which I call astrotheology. And I'm so impressed with my brothers and sisters online who are spreading this information about astrotheology just in the last week, right? Like, you guys are doing a kick-ass job of putting out all this information about ancient systems of worship and different knowledge of the stars and different measurements of creation, how all these things come together to form a combination of religion with astrology, with science, with what we call quote-unquote quantum, which is kind of a complicated, tricky term. We'll get to that later, right? But the idea is astrotheology is a combination of all these different systems on Earth which have been created that they never go away, right? Like, they're always there. And depending on how much use and belief they have, these things really can influence us quite a bit. And like, that might sound mysterious, but really what it comes down to is the planets all have energy, right? And they circle around us, and we all balance each other and affect each other in various ways, which are varying from complex all the way down to super simple. And it's just a matter of how much you look into it and understand. But the deeper you look, the more you realize that every single thing is connected. I mean, the mirror goes on and on and on and on forever. Once someone told me, keep staring into a mirror until you vomit, basically. And that's true. Early on in my ascension, it was a guide who had spoken this to me, and it's really true. Like, the mirrors are endless. Once you realize the nature of duality and duplicity, you'll realize that as soon as you figure out one mystery, there's another mystery behind that one. And there's another mystery behind that one, and another mystery behind that. Once you figure out one solution, there's another problem right behind that one, and so on and so forth. And that is also true when it comes to heredity and DNA and genetics and what we call bloodlines, right? Like, there's always another side. There's never one thing alone. It's always in pairs, it seems like. And it seems like this is the nature of consciousness, that we always have two, and that there's this sort of balance and discussion between a minimum of two persons. And this creates conversation. This creates ideas and different things that weren't possible before. And the more of these that you have, the more complex they get. And so here we are in this big complex world with all these different things that add to it. And astrotheology is the idea that over the millions and billions of years that the Earth and the other systems in this universe had been created, and all the different things were living on it together and sorting themselves out. Like, over time, different things arose, some of them man-made, some of them natural, and they all created sort of this terrarium clock system, which is our solar system. It's like we live in a giant hourglass with all the universe spinning around it, and it's like we're both living inside the hourglass, and we are the hourglass contraption itself, and we control both of those things. And so that's why I think our lives are so difficult now, because we're trying to figure out, how do we both be inside the hourglass, and how do we be as the hourglass itself, and how do you go back and forth between those two things? That basic duality is extremely complex, and it gets right down to the nature of the soul, and what is a soul versus what is a body. We'll look at it this way. Let's say your body is inside the hourglass, right? Like, and I did a picture the other day that kind of showed something like this. But let's say you're inside the hourglass. That's your body. When you participate in reality, when we're looking through our eyes at the world and we're doing our 9 to 5, that's where we are. But we're also learning that we're part of this way more complex thing, right? Like, we're part of this unity consciousness, which is basically like the hive mind, right? From Star Trek, the Borg. And it's true. But really, is that so bad? Well, it could be or it could not be, but that's not the point. The point is, we're all connected, right? Like a big flock of seagulls, and we all turn or don't turn in direction depending on our listening participation rate. And the listening participation rate is going up quite a bit over the last year for starseeds, and it's going up quite a bit more for other people in the next year. And as time goes on, and the more of us that awaken, the more of us will be, I guess we should say, taken in upon this thing. And so it almost like has a life of its own, but it doesn't. And anyways, that's the difference between the soul and the body. Like, the soul is what rides inside the little guy inside the hourglass, right? That's riding inside the body, and the soul is like what makes the hourglass. It's like all of our souls together make this giant construct which operates a certain way that it does because we all agree on it, really. And it's not just us humans. Like, we'd love to think that we're in control, but clearly we're not. So people talk about ETs, and people talk about magical creatures, and people talk about things that are like archons and kivas and other creatures, right? But all of these creatures together, whatever you call them, whatever they look like, all contribute to this system, right? And where we agree is basically how this system works. And it's been like this for many, many, many years, and it is designed to sort of protect us and keep us on a balance, on a calendar. And that's really the nature of our reality. So you look at some of the things like the Mayans and how they figured out the calendar, and in the Gregorian period where they changed the calendar over, and all these things were hugely influential on the forces of creation, because creation itself, I believe, is sort of operating on an agreed upon calendar, and anything changing in that is like a major affair, right? It's like a major deal. That's astrotheology. It is partly done because of the rotation of the planets, and it's partly done because of the way energy on Earth interacts with each other. And the more and more we interact with each other in this one mind, a hive mind, collective, whatever, the more influence we have on astrotheology, which quite simply is why it's been a rolled out release, all right? It's a safety thing. We can't just have every single person connect to it at once. That would be absolute anarchy and chaos. Think about how powerful the elements really are. And if we're going in the direction of a more magical world where more people are doing more miraculous things before our very eyes, well, then with that comes an inherent amount of responsibility, right? With a big power comes big responsibility. And so I think it's up to us to learn how to use these things responsibly, how to teach them to others and describe them. And when we talk about full disclosure, this is really what we're talking about, people. We're talking about how quickly can we explain things to people in a way that they'll understand, so that we believe them and they believe them too, and together we can use our combined power of belief to manifest them in a way that both of us can see and realize. That's the truth. That's the simplicity of it right there, is if we want people to believe things, we hold that space, we help them to believe and communicate that in a way that they understand, and then through that understanding, we can create them together. And that's why we need to talk to Christians. We cannot avoid this problem. We cannot avoid talking to people who are religious, because they make up the vast majority of people in the world. That's why the world is an interesting place. You know that? Because we all have this ability to do what's called holding space. Holding space is the idea that if a group of people, or even one person, believes something strongly enough that they can hold that idea in belief and never forget it, you keep potential there for that belief to come to reality, to be created in front of you. And enough people doing this generates a lot of space which can be preserved, and that's what Christianity is. It's a whole lot of real estate, okay? And if you compare that to, say, paganism, that's a lot more real estate than paganism has. But paganism has a lot more in common with, let's say, the Eastern religions right now than it does with the Western religions of Christianity. And that's kind of why paganism drifts over in that direction. But I think even pagans need to understand that there's a lot more in relation to Christianity that they have with each other that they don't even realize. And they need to take a deeper look. And that's also what I'm calling out to today. My friends who I'll just say go to school, my friends who are involved in different groups and in associations, who know what I'm talking about, who know some of the higher mysteries and things like this. You guys, I love you guys, but like, here's the problem with us, okay? And I'm not affiliated with any one of you particularly, but I'll just tell you, here's the problem with us. We're a little too smart for our own good, all right? And we tend to get a little brash and irritated after a while because people don't hear us. And then let's just say the serpent comes out in us a bit online. That's not okay either. We need to find a way to look past that and to use our smartness to kind of interject between the spaces and really get people to think without insulting them too harshly, because as soon as you insult someone, you completely turn off their ability to learn from you in 99% of people. We have to find ways to interject ideas that don't turn them off right away, and that's difficult for many people who have been in the muck for a while, let's just say, because they're so used to being dejected, they're so used to having their ideas being ridiculed, that after a while they just kind of throw up their hands and say, well, screw it. I'm telling you guys, we can't do that. It's the smart people, the ones in schools, and the ones who are over in the East, who understand Eastern tradition, who can help tie all these different traditions together in a way that's cohesive. And I think the chakra system in the tree of life is a great way to do it, because it's something that we can talk about in relation to the days of creation that Christians can understand. Like, you could even relate the whole tree to the days of creation, and that would be a great starting point. And I've seen somebody do that before, and I thought it was really kind of neato. But this is what I'm saying, guys. Like, magic, quote unquote, and alchemy, and all these different things, and spirit science, like, these are things which have flexibility that allow us to have a creative interpretation on things in order to explain them in a different way to get you to understand. That's the whole point of it, right? So I think we need to focus on explaining how some of these things with Christian mythology are actually quite related to some of the solar, lunar worship type things that we don't really talk about that much, but we're starting to talk about more now, and how that ties into astrotheology, and how the Bible is basically not only the story that it is that talks about the people, but it's also basically a tale of the solar lunar family. And you can literally go through there and you can describe the different variations of movements of the solar astral bodies just by looking at the different parts of the Bible, and it talks about these things. That's just one interpretation of it, but there's other things too. You can look at the Hebrew mysticism aspect of it, which is very interesting as well, and you can start getting into that. But all these things tying back into language and history and where we came from and how the Bible was written and how the things became dispersed and why there was even a school in the first place and how the mysteries began and all these things, and basically why the hell did we ever separate? Why did we become different parts of the same family? That's the story we need to tell now, brothers and sisters, because that is where we're going to get more gravity. We need more gravity. We need more gravity on our side to get more people engaged in the one mind consciousness more quickly.